Okay, we're going to continue now with the course everybody knows, and we're on topic 7. And topic 7's thesis is this: excuses are built around circumstance, environment, and genetics. That's what it is. They're built around what I'm living with, the environment I'm in, and the genetics, in other words, from my parents. Sometimes it can be environmental, from my upbringing, whatever. But the bottom line is we have excuses. Crimes get committed, and circumstances is always brought up. Tough upbringing, raised on the wrong side of the tracks. And the key here is that circumstances only influence. And if you give anyone a reason to have an excuse, they'll give you the evidence. And this is not educational. This is something that's been shoehorned into schools, and I shared that when I did the presentation initially. I'm just reviewing this with you so you have an idea about where we're going. There is only one solution to this. What we have to do is we have to start when kids are younger, and we have to build a system where respect is something that is demanded, and we have to make sure that kids are compliant first. They have to do what they're told when they're told to do it. And when kids are born, we start asking too many questions as they become like 2 or 3, like, what do you want to do, what do you want for dinner, what do you want to wear, and so on. And all of that gives them the idea that they can make those decisions. And that's not where we want to be. Compliance is first. Now, I used to think that that's where kids had to be until they were about 10 years old. The bottom line is they stay in the tip of the triangle. They stay in the tip of the triangle until they are compliant. So that means they have very little freedoms, and parents control just about everything. The idea that you have structured choices and that type of thing, that works when kids are a little older and when they have exhibited compliance. Now, once we have the compliance, we move down the triangle. And as we move down that triangle, okay, we have to lead by the power of our authority, or the influence of our authority. And children enter mental puberty around the age of 9 or 10. And so what happens here is, okay, we're still in charge. We're still looking for some form of compliance, but we can start to give those structured choices at that point. Now, why is this important? Because kids need to be responsible. And if we want to teach responsibility, we have to have respect first. So here's the responsibility. Coming around the age of 9 or 10, when they hit that mental puberty and go into physical puberty. If you have a good relationship with your kids, when they hit mental puberty, whether they're students or your own children, what will happen is you'll be able to speak into their life, make them more responsible, and all of this stuff about circumstance and my environment, genetics, they will be responsible regardless. And they won't feel as if they're determined. As people grow older, they start to think they're determined and they can't change. With this, responsibility will be more important than circumstance or their environment or their upbringing or whatever, or genetics or whatever the case may be. Now, with teenagers, you lead by the power of your relational influence. Remember, up here we led by the power of our authority. Now we lead by the power of our influence. Now we can speak into their life. We're forming a relationship with them. And we can work with them as if they were an older person. And kids that are respectful and responsible first, and compliant first, we will have no trouble working with those kids. When those kids are grow to believe that they can say and do whatever they want to do because we've allowed them to make those choices in their life. That's where the problems come in. And then once you get beyond that, once we have compliance and respect, now the relationship moves into adulthood. And there's more and more freedom that a child can have. And as they become young adults, you trust them more. And once you have trust, you can give more freedom. See, there's a very big difference between liberty and freedom. Liberty is a condition of the environment. Freedom is a condition of the soul. A kid can walk out of the house angry at his parents and everything else without a problem. They have that freedom when they're teenagers to do it, but they never have freedom in their soul because there's a vacuum inside of every person that wants to have a relationship with their mother and father or a significant other that they've walked away from because they've set up rules. And once the rules are violated, and if someone becomes rebellious and they make a decision to leave, I think that what happens is they do leave, they have that liberty, but there's no freedom. Guilt is there, fear is there, anxiety is there, depression is there, it's all there, and they lose that feeling that they are truly emotionally free. And they're not. The only way they get free is when they repair relationships that they had with their parents or significant others. Now, that's the ideal situation. Here's what we do today. We have freedom and choices to young kids, temper tantrums, crying, whining. And you know, it's real easy to give in to a little kid, but what we forget is that those kids become adults. And if we grow into the habit of giving in, what will happen is when they are young adults, by that I mean teenage and higher, we're going to have a big problem. I wrote an article once. It was called 25 cents to 25,000. You know, it costs $0.25 to buy a gumball and a gumball machine, but it's not the quarter, it's the freedom at which you give that $0.25 to the child. And certain times what will happen is 25 cents becomes $2.50, $2.50 becomes $25, $25 becomes $2.50. It becomes an expected thing until you reach 25,000 and you're giving them a down payment for a house. 25 cents to 25,000. So we have to be cautious even how we give small amounts of money to kids. At this time, they start saying and doing what they want. They're argumentative. This is between 10 and 13 because they don't have the boundaries. This is where all the excuses come in. This is where everybody gets blamed. This is where you never were a good parent. This is where it all starts. You know, this is where they start calling attention to our faults. They never focus on themselves. They're focusing on everybody else. And then once they hit, you know, grades 9 to 12, they don't have the self-discipline and the self-motivation. This is why we have more trouble with motivation with kids who are in high school than we ever did before. And they almost appear disaffected, but all they're doing is waiting to do what they want to do, and then we start to have the power struggles, and believe you me, folks, it is real difficult to restrain the behaviors of a rebellious teenager. That's why when they walk out, they have that liberty. That's what they want, but they don't have the freedom. So, circumstances, environment, genetics, all of that, come on. What we have to do is we have to start focusing on 3 things, and that's compliance, responsibility, respect, and responsibility. If we can get those 3 things under our belt and start building a relationship with kids, and staying within the tip of that triangle when they're younger, what will begin to happen is we will find that we will have happier kids, kids that are far more agreeable, kids that cooperate, kids that help out around the house, and they won't be blaming every situation for their lot in life. And if you think it's bad with kids, it's even worse for adults. When adults grow up and never break out of that mold where they blame others for how they turned out, it is extremely painful. Sometimes they become addicted, they become alcoholics, they become they're unemployed all the time, they can't hold jobs, and it's a very, very sad thing to watch. This is the key. Stop blaming all the circumstances, all of the genetics, all of the environment. Stop blaming it. Stop with the excuses. Let's get our kids to be respectful. Let's get our kids to be responsible. And above all, let's build that relationship with them for lifelong success.